touch him and you die." The warning came from the royal guard, his sword already drawn, but Alara barely heard it over the sound of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Before her, chained to the stone floor of the throne room with silver bonds that burned his flesh, was something that had once been a man. The Alpha King Kyle, or what was left of him. His body was caught between forms, muscles rippling and reforming under skin that could not decide if it wanted to be human or beast. Fur sprouted and receded in patches across his back and shoulders. His face was a nightmare of transformation frozen halfway, jaw extended, teeth too long, eyes flickering between human intelligence and animal rage. Blood dripped from where the silver chains cut into his wrists and ankles, but he did not seem to notice. He was too busy fighting himself. "Please," the elderly healer beside her whispered, his voice shaking. "Do not go closer. We have lost 3 healers already. He cannot control it. The beast has taken over." Ilara looked at the broken king and felt something shift inside her chest. Not fear, though fear would have been reasonable. Not pity, though the sight of such suffering would have moved anyone. It was something else entirely. Recognition. As if every moment of her life had been leading to this one. As if the reason she had never been able to call her own wolf was because she was meant for something different. Something more. She stepped forward. The guard shouted. Someone grabbed her arm, but she pulled free with surprising strength. Her bare feet moved across the cold marble floor, as if guided by instinct older than thought. Kale's head snapped toward her, and the sound that came from his throat was not human. It was the growl of something primal. Something that had forgotten it had ever been anything but predator. His eyes locked on hers, gold and wild and lost. And for a moment, Alara thought the guards might be right. That she was about to die. That she had made a terrible mistake. But she did not stop. She knelt before him, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin, close enough that his breath, too hot and too fast, stirred her hair. Close enough to die if he decided she was a threat. "I see you," she said softly, and reached out her hand. The moment her fingers touched his chest, everything changed. Kale's entire body went rigid. The growling stopped. The thrashing ceased. His eyes, which had been nothing but animal rage a second before, suddenly focused with an intensity that stole her breath. The half-formed transformation began to reverse, fur receding, bones shifting back. The nightmare face slowly, painfully, becoming human again. It was not a complete transformation. He was still caught between worlds, still trapped in the prison of his own body. But for the first time in months, there was a pause. A moment of peace in the endless war he was fighting with himself. And then Alara felt it. Pull, deep in her chest, as if something inside her was reaching toward something inside him. A connection that bypassed thought and reason and went straight to the core of what they were. She gasped, trying to pull her hand back, but found she could not move. Or perhaps she did not want to. Because along with the connection came sensation. She felt his pain as if it were her own. The agony of a body trying to be 2 things at once. The exhaustion of a mind that had not known rest in so long. The loneliness of a man who had forgotten what it felt like to be touched without violence. The rage of a beast that had been caged its entire life, and finally had broken free, only to discover that freedom was just another kind of prison. She felt all of it, every sharp edge and bleeding wound, and instead of pulling away, she leaned closer. "I see you," she said again. And this time her other hand came up to cup his face, his very human face. Because against all odds, against everything that should have been possible, Kale had completed the transformation back. He knelt before her now, fully human, naked and shaking, and staring at her with an expression of such shock that it might have been funny under other circumstances. The throne room had gone completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody seemed to breathe. How? Kale's voice was rough, barely more than a rasp, as if he had forgotten how to form words. How did you do that? Alara did not have an answer. She did not understand what had just happened any more than he did. All she knew was that her hands were still on his face, and she could still feel that impossible connection thrumming between them, and that for the first time in her entire life, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. I do not know, she whispered. Behind her she heard footsteps, quick and angry. Get away from him. The voice was female, cultured and sharp as a blade. Guards, remove this woman immediately. Alara turned to see a woman sweeping toward them, her gown a cascade of deep purple silk. Her dark hair pulled back in an elaborate style that must have taken hours to achieve. She was beautiful in the way that powerful things are beautiful. Dangerous and polished and entirely sure of herself. Lady Morgana. Even Alara, who had spent her entire life in the small border territory of Silverbrook, had heard of her. The daughter of Alpha Dorian, ruler of the largest and wealthiest pack in the kingdom. The woman who had been promised to Kyle since they were children. His future queen. I said get away from him, Morgana repeated, and there was power in her voice now. The kind of power that made lesser wolves bow their heads and submit. But Alara did not feel the urge to submit. She felt the urge to bare her teeth, which was strange, because she did not have a wolf. She had never had a wolf. She stays. Kyle's voice cut through the tension like thunder. He had risen to his feet, and someone had thrown a cloak around his shoulders, though he had not bothered to close it. His eyes, still gold from the partial transformation, had not left Alara's face. She stays, he repeated. And this time it was not a statement, but a command. The kind of command that an Alpha King gives when he expects to be obeyed without question. Morgana's perfect face twisted with something ugly for just a moment, before smoothing back into pleasant neutrality. Of course, my lord, she said, her tone suggesting it. Was anything but, of course. I simply worry for your safety. This woman is unknown to us, untested. It could have been luck, or worse, some kind of trick. She moved closer, her gaze sweeping over Alara with barely concealed disdain. Look at her. She is nobody. A border pack healer with no family, no status, no wolf of her own. Surely you cannot believe that she succeeded where our finest healers failed? I believe what I felt, Kale said quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that made smart people nervous. And what I felt was peace for the first time in 8 months. So yes, Lady Morgana, I believe she succeeded. The question is why that bothers you so much. The air in the throne room crackled with tension. Alara wanted to disappear, to fade into the marble floor and never have to face the weight of all these eyes on her. She was not made for courts and politics and power games. She was made for quiet rooms and gentle hands and the simple work of healing. But Kale's hand had found hers, his fingers lacing through hers with a possessiveness that sent heat racing up her arm, and she found she could not move even if she wanted to. The council should be informed, someone said from the shadows near the throne. An elderly man stepped forward, his robes marking him as the High Counselor. If this woman truly has the ability to stabilize His Majesty's condition, then arrangements must be made. She should be housed in the castle, close, in case she is needed. She will. Stay in the East Wing, Kale said immediately. In the rooms adjacent to mine. The shock that rippled through the room was almost tangible. Those were the Queen's chambers. They had been empty since Kale's mother died 15 years ago, preserved and untouched, waiting for the woman who would become his wife and rule at his side. Morgana's carefully maintained composure cracked completely. You cannot be serious, she hissed. Those chambers are meant for your mate. Your queen, not some common healer who got lucky. I am completely serious, Kale replied, and his hand tightened on Alara's. This woman just gave me back something I thought I had lost forever. My humanity, my control, myself. She will be treated with the respect and honor that deserves, and she will stay close, because apparently, I need her. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. The rest of that first day passed in a blur that Alara could barely process. She was swept from the throne room by a flock of servants who looked at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. They led her through hallways that seemed to stretch forever, past tapestries and portraits and windows that looked out over grounds so vast she could not see where they ended. The castle was enormous, overwhelming, nothing like the small wooden structures of her home pack. Everything here was stone and grandeur and the weight of centuries of power. The queen's chambers were even more overwhelming. The main room alone was larger than the entire healer's cottage she had lived in back home. There was a bed that could have fit 6 people, draped in silk the color of midnight. Wardrobes filled with gowns she could not imagine wearing. A balcony that overlooked the royal gardens. A bathing room with a tub carved from a single piece of marble. The maids will bring you suitable clothing, the head housekeeper said, her tone professionally neutral, but her eyes sharp with assessment. Dinner will be served in your chambers tonight. His Majesty has requested that you rest after your journey. Tomorrow, you will meet with the royal physician to discuss His Majesty's treatment plan. Alara nodded mutely, too overwhelmed to form words. The housekeeper left, and finally, she was alone. She sank onto the edge of the massive bed and let herself shake. What had she done? What had she agreed to? She was not supposed to be here, in these rooms, wearing the title of King's Healer, like it was something she had earned rather than something that had been thrust upon her by chance and desperation. She was Alara, nobody, the girl without a wolf, the healer who was good with her hands but would never be powerful or important or anything other than exactly what she had always been. Except that was not true anymore, was it? Because she had touched Kale, and something had happened. Something impossible. Something that still thrummed in her veins like an echo of that connection, faint but present, as if a thread now tied her to him across the distance of the castle. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat, and wondered if he could feel it too. If somewhere in his chambers, the Alpha King was pressing his own hand to his chest and feeling the ghost of her touch still lingering on his skin. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel less alone. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting servants with the promised clothing. Instead, the door opened to reveal Kale himself. He had bathed and dressed in simple black clothes that somehow made him look more intimidating rather than less. His hair, dark as midnight, was still damp. His face, which she had only seen twisted in agony or shock, was composed now, almost calm. But his eyes, those gold eyes that marked him as Alpha, were intense as they found hers across the room. "I wanted to check on you," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. The click of the lock seemed very loud in the sudden silence. "To make sure you had everything you need, and to apologize." Apologize? Alara stood, suddenly aware of how small and plain she must look in this grand room, in her travel-stained dress with her hair falling from its simple braid. "For what?" "For putting you in this position," Kyle said, moving closer. "For dragging you into a situation you did not ask for making you a target." "A target?" The word sent ice down her spine. "Morgana will not take kindly to being displaced," Kale said bluntly. "She has spent her entire life preparing to be queen. Having you here, in these chambers, with the kind of access to me that even she does not have, it will make you an enemy in her eyes. And Morgana is not someone you want as an enemy." He stopped a few feet from her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion etched into his features, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. I should have thought of that before I made such a public declaration, but I was not thinking clearly. I was just so relieved to feel human again that I did not consider the consequences. Then send me away, Alara said quietly. House me somewhere else, somewhere less provocative. No. The word was absolute. Final. Why not? She asked. Because I cannot, Kyle said, and there was something raw in his voice now. Something vulnerable that she suspected he rarely let anyone see. Because the moment you walked away from me in that throne room, I felt it starting again. The pull. The beast trying to claw its way back out. It was faint, manageable, but it was there. And I realized that whatever you did, whatever connection you created, it is not permanent. It requires proximity. It requires you. He took another step closer, and Alara found she could not breathe properly. I need you close, Alara. Not because I want to put you in danger or make your life difficult, but because without you, I am going to lose myself again. And this time, I do not think I will come back. The vulnerability in his words, the fear underneath the alpha command, it broke something open in Alara's chest. She had spent her whole life being the one who helped others, who soothed pain and mended wounds, but always from a safe distance, always professional, always careful not to get too involved, too attached. But there was nothing safe about this, nothing distant. Then I will stay, she said. I will stay, and I will help you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I think maybe this is what I was meant to do. Why I never had a wolf. Because I was meant for this. For you. The words were out before she could stop them, more honest than she had intended, and she saw something flare in Kale's eyes. Something that made her heart stutter. Alara, he said, her name rough on his tongue. Do you understand what you are saying? I am saying I see you, she whispered. I see the man and the beast, and I am not afraid of either. I am saying that whatever this is between us, I want to understand it. I want to help. I want to stay. For a long moment, Kale just stared at her. Then he closed the distance between them in 2 long strides and pulled her into his arms. It was not romantic. It was not gentle. It was desperate. The embrace of a drowning man finding solid ground. He buried his face in her hair and held her so tightly she could barely breathe, and she felt his entire body shaking with the force of emotions he was trying to contain. Thank you, he breathed against her temple. Thank you. Alara wrapped her arms around him and held on just as tightly, and felt that connection between them strengthen, solidify, become something real and tangible. She did not know what it meant. She did not know what they were to each other or what they were becoming, but she knew with absolute certainty that everything in her life had changed, and there was no going back. The next morning brought the royal physician, a stern man named Marcus, who looked at Alara with the kind of skepticism that suggested he did not appreciate having his expertise questioned by a nobody from a border pack. He subjected her to 2 hours of interrogation about her methods, her training, her understanding of wolf physiology and transformation dynamics. Alara answered as best she could, but she had no answers that would satisfy him. She did not know how she had done what she had done. She did not know why her touch had succeeded where others failed. She only knew that it had worked. It is unprecedented, Marcus finally said, his tone suggesting this was not a compliment. The transformation sickness that His Majesty suffers from is caused by a complete imbalance between his human and wolf natures. The beast has become too strong, too dominant. It should not be possible to reverse such a condition with touch alone. There must be something else, some element you are not aware of or not disclosing. I have disclosed everything, Alara said, keeping her voice level despite her growing frustration. I put my hands on him, and I felt a connection form. Through that connection, I could sense his pain and his struggle, and somehow, my presence calmed the beast. I do not know why. I do not know how. I just know that it did. Marcus's eyes narrowed. You felt his pain? Describe that. It was like... Alara struggled for words. Like I was inside his mind, or his heart. I could feel the war happening inside him, the beast and the man fighting for control, and I could feel how exhausted he was, how close to breaking. So I just tried to show him he was not alone, that someone saw him, that someone understood. That is empathic bonding, Marcus said slowly. An extremely rare ability that allows one wolf to connect with and influence another's emotional state. But it should not be possible for someone without a wolf to have such an ability. The wolf spirit is what allows the empathic channel to open. I have never had a wolf, Alara said quietly. Everyone in my pack assumed I was defective. Broken, somehow. Or protected, Marcus murmured, more to himself than to her. Tell me about your parents. Your bloodline. What do you know of your ancestry? Nothing, Alara admitted. I was found as an infant, abandoned at the edge of pack territory. The alpha took me in out of mercy. I was raised by the pack healer, who trained me in her craft, but I have no idea where I came from. No idea who my parents were. Marcus's expression shifted. For the first time, he looked at her with something other than skepticism. He looked at her with fascination. That explains much, he said, and raises even more questions. If you will allow it, I would like to examine you. Run some tests. There may be answers in your blood that could help us understand this gift you possess. Alara wanted to refuse. She did not like the way he was looking at her now, as if she were a specimen to be studied rather than a person. But Kale's voice from the previous night echoed in her mind. I need you close. I need you. Fine, she said. But only if it helps Kale. Everything I do here is to help him, not to satisfy your curiosity. Of course, Marcus said, but the gleam in his eyes suggested his curiosity was very much a factor. He drew her blood with efficient movements, filled 3 vials that seemed excessive for simple testing, and made several notes in a leather-bound journal that he did not let her see. When he finally left, Alara felt drained, not physically, but emotionally. Being examined, questioned, analyzed, it made her feel exposed in a way that had nothing to do with modesty. A knock at her door brought relief, until she opened it and found Morgana standing in the hallway, her smile pleasant, and her eyes cold as ice. May I come in? Morgana asked, though her tone suggested it was not really a question. She swept past Alara before an answer could be given, her gaze traveling around the Queen's chambers with an expression that made it clear she believed these rooms should be hers. What do you want? Alara asked, too tired for games. To talk, Morgana said, turning to face her. Woman to woman, without all the political posturing and public performance. I think we should be honest with each other, do not you? I am always honest, Alara said. Good. Then honestly, you must see that this situation is untenable. Morgana moved to the window, her profile sharp against the morning light. You are a novelty, an interesting development, but you are not a solution. You are not trained in the politics of the royal court. You have no allies, no family, no power base. You are a healer from a border pack who got lucky once. Kyle does not think it was luck, Alara said quietly. Kyle is desperate, Morgana countered. And for a moment, there was something almost like sympathy in her voice. He has been suffering for so long that of course he would cling to the first person who offered him even a moment of relief. But desperation makes people irrational. It makes them see things that are not really there, make connections that do not truly exist. She turned to face Alara fully. I am not here to threaten you, I am here to offer you a reality check. You cannot stay here. Not in these chambers. Not with this kind of access to the king. It will destroy you. The court will eat you alive. They will find every weakness, every insecurity, every mistake you make, and they will use it against you. Against him. Is that what you want? To be the reason Kale's kingdom falls apart? What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The words hit harder than Alara wanted to admit. Because Morgana was right, was not she? Alara was nobody. She had no training in politics or court intrigue. She had no idea how to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that clearly defined life in the royal castle. She was going to make mistakes. She was going to be a liability. I see I have given you something to think about, Morgana said, her smile returning. That is all I wanted. I am not your enemy, Alara. I am simply someone who understands this world better than you do. Someone who could help you if you were wise enough to accept that help. And what would that help cost me? Alara asked. Nothing. You are not already planning to give up, Morgana said. I want you to admit that this connection you have with Kale is temporary, that it is a tool for his healing, nothing more. I want you to do your job, cure him, and then return to your pack. Let him rule with someone who actually knows how to be a queen. Before Alara could respond, the door burst open. Kale stood in the doorway, his face dark with fury. Get out, he said to Morgana, his voice so cold that Alara felt frost forming in the air. Kale, Morgana began. I said, get out. He stepped into the room, and the air seemed to vibrate with barely controlled power. You will not come to these chambers again without invitation. You will not speak to Alara privately. You will not question her place here or her value. Because unlike you, Lady Morgana, she has never once pretended to care about me for anything other than political gain. Morgana's face went white, then red. How dare you, she breathed. I have been loyal to you my entire life. You have been loyal to the idea of being queen, Kale corrected. There is a difference. Now leave, before I forget that your father is an important ally and say something we will both regret. Morgana left, her spine rigid with fury, and the door closed behind her with a sharp click. The silence that followed was thick with tension. You heard? Alara asked quietly. I felt you, Kale said, moving toward her. I was in a council meeting, and suddenly I felt this wave of doubt and fear and insecurity, and I knew it was coming from you. I came as fast as I could. He took her hands, his grip warm and solid. Do not listen to her. Morgana is scared. She sees her carefully laid plans falling apart, and she is lashing out. None of what she said was true. Some of it was true, Alara said. I am not trained for this. I do not know how to navigate your world. I am going to make mistakes. Then we will fix them together, Kyle said fiercely. Alara, I need you to understand something. What I feel when you are near, it is not desperation. It is not me clinging to false hope. It is real. You are real. And yes, you calm my beast. But you do more than that. You make me feel human in a way I have not felt in years. Maybe ever. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I do not need a queen who knows politics. I need someone who sees me, really sees me, the broken parts and the brutal parts, and the parts I am ashamed of. And you do. You see all of it, and you do not run. That is rarer than any amount of political training. Alara felt tears burning at the back of her eyes. What if I fail you? You will not, Kyle said with absolute certainty. Because you care too much to fail. Because you are stronger than you know. And because whatever this connection is between us, it is not one-sided. You ground me, yes. But I think maybe I give you something too. Permission to be more than you thought you could be. Permission to be powerful. I am not powerful, Ilara whispered. You tamed something that has destroyed trained warriors, Kyle said. You walked up to a monster and you touched it with gentle hands, and you turned it back into a man. If that is not power, I do not know what is. He leaned his forehead against hers, and Ilara felt that connection between them pulse, strengthen, become something that felt less like a tool and more like a bond. A real bond. The kind that myths were written about. Stay, he said softly. Not because I need you to heal me, but because I want you to. Because I think maybe we are meant to be exactly where we are, together. I will stay, Ilara promised. For as long as you want me. Then you will stay forever, Kale said, and kissed her. It was not their first touch, but it was their first kiss, and the moment their lips met, something inside Ilara ignited. Not her wolf. She still did not have a wolf. Something that had been sleeping her entire life. Something ancient and powerful and hers. The kiss broke, both of them gasping, and Kale stared at her with wide eyes. Did you feel that? He demanded. Yes, Ilara breathed. What was it? I do not know, but we are going to find out. The tests that Marcus ran over the following days revealed things that nobody had expected. Ilara's blood, when examined under special moonlight conditions that made wolf heritage visible, did not glow with the WAM. Standard silver that marked normal wolf lineage, it glowed gold. Pure, bright, undeniable gold. This is impossible, Marcus said for the 5th time, staring at the blood sample as if it had personally offended him. Gold blood has not been seen in 300 years. Not since the Luna bloodline was wiped out. Luna bloodline? Ilara repeated, the words sending a strange shiver down her spine. The original royal line, Kale said quietly. He had insisted on being present for all the test. Results, his hand never leaving Ilara's. Before my family took the throne, before the Great War, the Lunas were said to be descended directly from the moon goddess herself. They did not need to shift to access their power. Their human forms were enough. They could calm or incite beasts with a thought, could heal or harm with a touch. They were the ultimate rulers because they could control what all wolves fear most, losing control of the beast within. But they were all killed, Marcus said. When the alliance of alphas rose up and took power, every member of the Luna family was executed to prevent any future claim to the throne, or so the histories say. Clearly the histories were incomplete, Kale said, his eyes on Ilara. Because you are standing here, with gold blood and empathic abilities that match every description of Luna power that has ever been recorded. Ilara felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. You are saying I am descended from the original royal family? That I have a claim to the throne? I am saying you do not just have a claim, Marcus said slowly. If your bloodline is pure, which the gold color suggests it is, you have the only legitimate claim. My family took power through conquest, not inheritance. We have ruled for 3 centuries, and we have done it well. But technically, we are usurpers. If a Luna returned, if one was found alive with proof of heritage, the council would be obligated to acknowledge their right to rule. The implications crashed over Ilara like a wave. She was not nobody. She was not defective. She was the last descendant of the most powerful wolf bloodline that had ever existed. And she was sitting in the castle of the family that had murdered hers. She pulled her hand from Kyle's and stood, needing distance, needing space to breathe. This is too much, she said. I do not want to be royal. I do not want to have claims to thrones. I just want to help people, to heal, to be useful in quiet ways. I know, Kale said gently, and nobody is going to force you to do anything you do not want to do. But Ilara, you need to understand what this means. Why you were abandoned as a baby. Your parents were not trying to get rid of you. They were trying to save you, because if anyone had known what you were, you would have been killed immediately. And now? Ilara asked, fear clawing at her throat. Now everyone is going to know. Marcus cannot keep this secret. It is too big. And when Morgana finds out, when her father finds out, when the entire kingdom finds out that the nobody healer in the Queen's chambers is actually the rightful heir to the throne, what do you think is going to happen? They will try to kill you, Kale said bluntly, or marry you, or use you, depending on what serves their interest best. He crossed to her, taking her shoulders in his hands. But I will not let any of that happen. Do you hear me? I do not care what your bloodline is. I do not care if you have a claim to my throne. I care that you are you, that you see me, that you make me feel human, and I will protect you with everything I have. Why? Ilara asked, her voice breaking. Why would you protect someone who could take everything from you? Because you would not, Kale said simply. That is the difference between you and every other person in this castle. You have the power to take everything, and you would never even think to do it. That is why you deserve protection. That is why you deserve everything I can give you. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. The news of Ilara's heritage spread through the castle like wildfire, and with it came changes that happened too fast for her to process. The servants' attitudes shifted overnight. Where before they had been politely neutral, now they were careful, respectful in a way that felt wrong because it was based on fear rather than regard. The council requested her presence at meetings she did not understand. Nobles she had never met sent gifts and invitations, and Morgana disappeared completely, retreating to her family's territory without a word, which somehow felt more ominous than any threat. She is planning something, Kale said darkly. They were in his study, the fire crackling in the hearth, the late evening sun painting everything gold. Morgana does not retreat unless she is regrouping, and her father is ambitious enough to see you as either an opportunity or a threat. Either way, he will act. What can I do? Ilara asked. She was sitting in a chair that was too large for her, wearing a dress that was too fine, feeling like a child playing dress-up in someone else's life. You can claim your birthright, Kale said. Officially, with witnesses and ceremony. You can take your place as Luna heir and make it impossible for anyone to harm you without starting a war. But I do not want that, Ilara protested. I never wanted power or titles or any of this. I know, Kale said gently. But sometimes we do not get to choose what we become. Sometimes destiny chooses for us, and your destiny has been choosing you since the moment you were born. You can run from it, or you can step into it. But either way, it will not leave you alone. He knelt before her chair, taking her hands. I am not asking you to be something you are not. I am asking you to be exactly what you are. Powerful, compassionate, strong enough to face the truth of your heritage, without letting it corrupt what makes you special. You are a healer, Ilara. That does not change whether you are a nobody from a border pack or the Luna heir. The only difference is how many people you can help. And if I cannot do it? Ilara asked. If I fail? Then you fail, Kale said. But you will fail trying, which is better than living your whole life wondering what might have been. And you will not fail alone. I will be right there with you. Every step, every choice, every moment. Ilara looked at this man, who had been a monster just weeks ago, who she had tamed with nothing but touch and truth, and she saw what nobody else seemed to see. He was not afraid of her power. He was not threatened by her heritage. He was not calculating how to use her for his own gain. He was simply there, solid and real, and offering her partnership instead of domination. Okay, she said. I will do it. I will claim my heritage. But not because I want power, because I want to protect what we have. This connection between us. Whatever it is, whatever it becomes, I do not want anyone to be able to take it away. Kale's smile was fierce and proud. Then we make you untouchable, he said, starting with the claiming ceremony. The claiming ceremony was an ancient ritual that had not been performed in centuries. It required the presence of all the major alphas, the full council, and the blessing of the high priest. It would take place on the next full moon, which gave them exactly 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks for Alara to learn how to walk like royalty, speak like royalty, command like royalty. It should have been impossible. But with Kale at her side, teaching her with patience and humor and unwavering support, she found it was merely difficult. "You are doing it again," he said one afternoon as they practiced court etiquette. "Apologizing with your body language. Your shoulders are hunched. Your head is down. You are making yourself small." "I am small," Alara protested. "No," Kale said firmly. "You are powerful, and you are choosing not to show it. There is a difference. Now, again, walk across the room like you own it." Alara tried. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and walked. But it felt wrong, like she was pretending to be something she was not. "Stop thinking of it as pretending," Kale said, as if he could read her mind. Perhaps he could. Their connection had grown stronger every day, to the point where she sometimes knew what he was feeling. Before he said anything, "You are not pretending to be powerful. You are revealing power that was always there. Nobody can give you power, Alara. They can only give you permission to show what you already have." Something about those words settled into Alara's bones. She walked across the room again, and this time it was different. This time she was not pretending. She was simply being the woman who had faced down a monster, being the descendant of moon goddesses, being someone worth protecting and worth respecting and worth taking seriously. "There," Kale said softly. "That is my Luna." The possessive "my" should have bothered her. Instead, it sent warmth cascading through her chest, because she was starting to realize that whatever was between them, it went beyond healing and protection. It went beyond political alliance or convenient partnership. She was falling in love with him, with his strength and his vulnerability, his fierceness and his gentleness, the way he looked at her like she was the most important thing in his world. And she thought, based on the way he looked at her, based on the way his hand always found hers in crowded rooms, based on the way he defended her without hesitation, that maybe he was falling too. The night before the claiming ceremony, Alara could not sleep. She stood on her balcony, looking out over the moonlit gardens, and tried to quiet the storm of anxiety in her chest. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would step into a role she never asked for, but could no longer avoid. Tomorrow, she would become someone new, or perhaps someone she had always been, finally revealed. "You are thinking too loud." Kale's voice came from behind her. He stepped onto the balcony, dressed in simple sleep clothes, his hair loose around his shoulders. He looked younger like this, less like a king, and more like a man. "I cannot turn my mind off," Alara admitted. "I keep thinking about all the ways tomorrow could go wrong. People who will be angry, all the challenges I will have to face." "Then stop thinking about tomorrow," Kale said, moving to stand beside her. "And think about right now, this moment. You and me and the moon watching over us. Nothing else matters right now." Alara leaned into his side, and his arm came around her shoulders automatically. They stood like that for a long time, just breathing together, finding peace in proximity. "Can I tell you something?" Kale said eventually. "Anything." "I am glad my beast went wild," he said. I am glad I suffered and struggled and nearly lost myself completely. Because if I had not, I would never have needed you. I would never have brought you here. I would never have discovered that the woman I needed had been out there all along, just waiting for the right moment to walk into my life. Ilara turned to look up at him, and found his eyes already on her. Gold and intense and full of something that made her heart race. I am glad too, she whispered. Even though I am terrified, even though I have no idea what I am doing, I am glad I am here, with you. Ilara, Kyle said, and there was a question in the way he said her name, a request for permission. She answered by rising on her toes and kissing him. It was slower than their first kiss, deeper, less about desperation and more about discovery. His hands came up to cradle her face, gentle despite their strength, and she felt that connection between them ignite into something that was not just empathic understanding, but genuine emotion. Love. She loved him, and he loved her. She could feel it in the way he touched her, in the way he kissed her, in the way his entire body curved around hers like she was something precious that needed protecting. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kyle rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he said. "Not for anything improper. Just stay. Let me hold you. Let me remind you that whatever happens tomorrow, you are not facing it alone." "Yes," Ilara said. "Yes." They moved to his chambers, larger and darker than hers, and climbed into his massive bed. He pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like a shield, and for the first time in weeks, Ilara felt truly safe. She fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat, steady and strong, and dreamed of wolves running under the moon. The claiming ceremony took place in the grand amphitheater, a circular structure open to the sky where ancient rituals had been performed for millennia. Every important alpha in the kingdom was present, along with their heirs and advisors. The council filled the upper tiers. The common people filled the outer rings, thousands of them, all come to witness history. Ilara stood in the center of the circle, wearing a gown of pure white that seemed to glow in the torchlight, and tried not to let her fear show. The high priest approached, ancient and bent, but with eyes that were sharp as knives. He carried a chalice of silver, filled with water drawn from the sacred springs at the base of the moon temple. "Ilara of no pack," he intoned, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "You come before us claiming descent from the Luna bloodline. Do you swear that this claim is true and made in good faith?" "I do," Ilara said, and was relieved when her voice did not shake. "Then we shall test your claim," the high priest said. "By blood and by moon, and by the ancient power that flows through Luna. Descendants, drink from this chalice. If your heritage is true, the water will accept you. If it is false, the water will reject you, and you will be revealed as a pretender before all witnesses." He held out the chalice. Ilara took it with hands that wanted to tremble. She had not known about this part. Nobody had told her there would be a test. She looked up, found Kale in the crowd. He was standing with the other alphas, but his eyes were locked on hers, and she could feel his support like a physical presence. "Trust yourself," he seemed to say without words. "Trust what you are." Ilara raised the chalice to her lips and drank. The water was cold and tasted of moonlight and ancient things. For a moment, nothing happened. Then power exploded through her. It was not painful. It was not gentle either. It was simply overwhelming. Every cell in her body lit up like stars. Every nerve sang with energy. And deep inside her chest, something that had been sleeping her entire life finally woke up. Her wolf. Not a wolf like others had. Not an animal spirit that lived inside her and shared her body. Her wolf was her. It had always been her. The power, the strength, the instincts. They had been part of her human form all along, just waiting for the right catalyst to activate them. She gasped, and golden light poured from her skin. Not metaphorical light. Actual light, bright and warm and undeniable, spreading out from her in waves. It washed over the assembled crowd, and where it touched, wolves fell to their knees, not in submission, in recognition. The light faded slowly, and Alara stood in the center of the circle, glowing faintly, her eyes now the same gold as her blood. The high priest stared at her with an expression of awe and terror. "Luna heir," he said, and his voice shook. "True heir of the moon goddess line, we acknowledge your heritage, we acknowledge your power, we acknowledge your right to rule." The crowd erupted, some in cheers, some in shock, some in anger, but none in disbelief, because they had all felt it. The undeniable truth of what she was. Kale was moving before anyone else could react, crossing the amphitheater in long strides to stand beside her. He took her hand, and the contact grounded her, helped her contain the power that still wanted to overflow. "I claim her as my mate," he announced, his voice carrying across the space. "Luna heir or not, she is mine, and I am hers. Any who challenge this will answer to me." It was a bold declaration, a dangerous one, because by claiming her as his mate, Kale was making it clear that he had no intention of giving up his throne, but also no intention of standing in her way if she wanted to claim hers. He was proposing partnership, co-rule, a thing that had never been done before. The high priest looked between them, and slowly, a smile crossed his ancient face. "Then we shall have a coronation," he said, "and a wedding. 2 rulers, bound by mate bond and by choice. The Lichen King and the Luna Queen, balanced, equal, together." The crowd's reaction was split, half roared approval, half murmured concern. But before anyone could voice an objection, a voice rang out from the upper tiers. "I challenge this claim." Morgana stepped forward, her father Alpha Dorian beside her, and her smile was vicious. "The Luna heir may have power, but she has no experience, no training, no right to rule. And Kale is already betrothed to me by sacred contract. He cannot simply break that contract because he has found a new toy." Alara felt fury rise in her chest, hot and bright, and with it came power. Her power. Luna power. "I am nobody's toy," she said, and her voice echoed with command that made even the alphas shift uncomfortably. "And any contract made before my heritage was known is void, because I was supposed to be dead. My entire bloodline was supposed to be extinct. The fact that I survived, that I am here, that I have claimed what is mine by birthright, that changes everything." She stepped forward, and the golden light around her intensified. "If you want to challenge my right to rule, Lady Morgana, then challenge it properly. In the old way, champion against champion. Your best warrior against mine. Winner takes everything." It was a dangerous gambit. Alara had no idea how to fight, but she had something better. She had Kale. "I accept," Morgana said immediately. "My champion is Alpha Dorian himself, the strongest warrior in the kingdom. Who do you choose, little Luna? Who could possibly stand against my father?" "I choose the Lichen King," Alara said. "My mate, my partner, the man who has faced his own beast and won. He is my champion." Kale's hand tightened on hers. "Are you sure?" he murmured. "If I lose, you lose everything." "You will not lose," Alara said with absolute certainty. "Because you are fighting for something real. For us. That makes you stronger than any warrior fighting for political gain." Kale's smile was fierce and proud and full of love. "Then let us end this," he said. The challenge was set for the next evening, giving both champions time to prepare. Ilara spent that time with Kale, not training him for the fight, but simply being with him, reinforcing their connection, making sure he knew, without any doubt, that she believed in him completely. "I can beat Dorian," Cale said that night, as they lay together in his chambers. "He is strong, but he is older. His reflexes have slowed, and my beast is under control now, thanks to you. I can transform fully without losing myself. That gives me an advantage he cannot match." "It is not just about the fight," Ilara said softly. "It is about what comes after. If we win, we will have enemies. Powerful ones. People who fear change and fear losing their influence. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to rule with someone who will challenge everything the kingdom has known for 300 years? "I am ready to rule with you," Cale said simply. "Challenge or not. Because you are not going to destroy this kingdom. You are going to heal it. That is what you do. That is who you are. And I cannot think of anything the kingdom needs more." Ilara kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude and hope into that kiss, and felt him respond with equal intensity. They made love that night, slow and careful and achingly tender, sealing their bond in the most intimate way possible. And when Ilara finally fell asleep, wrapped in Cale's arms, she dreamed of the future, of a kingdom where power came from compassion instead of conquest, where leaders ruled through understanding instead of force, where the beast and the human could coexist in perfect balance. The fight took place in the same amphitheater, but the atmosphere was completely different. This was not ceremony. This was combat. Brutal and real and potentially deadly. Dorian stood on one side of the circle, already transformed into his wolf form. He was massive, his fur silver gray, his teeth like knives. He looked every inch the warrior alpha, undefeated in centuries of battles. Kyle stood on the other side, still human, his eyes gold and calm. He was not afraid. He was focused. The high priest raised his hand. "The challenge is set. First blood ends the fight. The winner's choice claims the throne. Begin." Dorian attacked immediately, moving with speed that should not have been possible for something so large. But Cale was ready. He transformed mid-leap, his body flowing from human to wolf in one smooth motion, and met Dorian's charge head-on. The impact shook the ground. They broke apart, circling each other, and Ilara could feel Cale's calm through their bond. He was not fighting with rage. He was fighting with strategy, using Dorian's aggression against him, letting the older alpha tire himself out while Cale conserved energy. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Two apex predators, two masters of violence, testing each other with fang and claw. And pure strength. Blood was drawn. Dorian's first, a shallow cut across his shoulder where Cale had gotten past his guard. It should have ended the fight. But Dorian did not stop. He lunged again, going for Cale's throat. And suddenly Ilara understood. This was not about winning a challenge anymore. This was about killing Cale. About removing the obstacle between Dorian and the throne. About stopping the change that Ilara represented before it could take root. "No," Ilara breathed, and power surged through her. Luna power. She did not think. She simply acted. Reaching out with the same empathic ability that had calmed Cale's beast, she touched Dorian's mind. And she did not calm it. She overwhelmed it. Every fear Dorian had ever suppressed. Every doubt. Every moment of weakness. Every time he had hurt someone to hide his own pain. She showed it all to him at once, forcing him to face everything he had spent a lifetime running from. Dorian's wolf stumbled, distracted, and Cale did not waste the opening. He had Dorian pinned in seconds, jaws around his throat, victory absolute. The amphitheater went silent. "Yield," Cale's growl was barely human. Dorian shifted back to human form, bleeding and beaten, and stared up at his opponent with hatred burning in his eyes. But he said the word. I yield. Kyle released him and transformed back to human form, standing over Dorian with the kind of dominance that needed no words. Then he turned and walked to Alara, taking her hand and raising it high. Your Luna Queen, he announced. Your rightful ruler. Anyone who challenges this challenges me, and I promise you, I will not be as merciful as I was today. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? The coronation happened 3 days later, a double ceremony that crowned both Kale and Alara as co-rulers. He kept his title of Lichen King. She became Luna Queen. Together, they represented balance, the old power and the new, strength and compassion, the beast and the human working in harmony instead of conflict. Morgana and her father were banished from court, their political influence shattered by their loss. Other alphas who had been part of their alliance quickly pledged loyalty to the new regime, seeing which way the wind was blowing. And slowly, carefully, Alara began the work of healing a kingdom that had been ruled by force for too long. She did not change everything overnight. That would have been foolish. But she changed small things. The way prisoners were treated, the way disputes were mediated, the way power was shared instead of hoarded. And with each change, she proved that her way could work, that compassion was not weakness, that understanding was not surrender. And through it all, Kale stood beside her. Her mate, her partner, her equal, the man who had been a monster and became human again through the touch of a woman who saw past the beast to the soul underneath. On their wedding night, after all the ceremonies and celebrations had ended, they stood together on the balcony of their shared chambers and looked out over their kingdom. Do you regret it? Kyle asked softly. Any of it? Being found? Being forced into this role? Having your quiet life torn apart? No, Alara said, and meant it with her whole heart. Because I found you. I found my purpose. I found out that I was never broken or defective or wrong. I was just waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right destiny. She turned to face him, taking his face in her hands the way she had that first day in the throne room. You were a beast that no alpha could tame, but you were never meant to be tamed. You were meant to be understood, accepted, loved. And I do love you, every part of you, the king and the wolf and the man. And I love you, Kale said, his voice rough with emotion. My Luna, my queen, my heart, the woman who saved me without even trying, who became everything I needed before I knew I needed anything at all. They kissed under the full moon, two souls that had found each other against impossible odds. And somewhere in the distance, wolves howled their approval. Because this was how it was meant to be. Balance. Partnership. Two halves of one whole, ruling together, loving fiercely. Showing an entire kingdom what true strength looked like. The beast that feared no alpha had trembled at her touch. And in that trembling, in that moment of vulnerability and truth, they had both found something neither had dared to hope for. They had found home.